I'm Kathy from the Delfield Quilt Company. This video is block number 7 of the 2024 Summer Sew Along. If you're sewing along or you're interested in sewing along, all the patterns for each of the blocks are on our website at delfieldquiltco.com. I hope you like the video. Alright, let's get started with block number 7. So I've already cut out all of my pieces, and if you haven't yet done so, just make sure you download the pattern on our website at delfieldquiltco.com. Alright, to start with this, I'm first going to make a few small little flying geese. And we're going to use the same method I've been using in all these videos to make flying geese, and that's the 4 at a time, no waste flying geese. I'm going to need piece A. You should have 4 of these little squares. And then piece M of your pink color. I'm just going to get these ones out of the way here. And you do need a writing utensil that is fabric friendly. I'm just going to use a pencil for this one today. And you are going to need your ruler. And the first thing we're going to do on this is draw a diagonal line on the 4 A pieces. And I do like to use my ruler in that 45-degree mark just to make sure I've got my diagonal nice and straight. And I'll just draw my lines on. I really like this method just because it's fast, easy, and there's very little waste. Right, now that I've got these drawn, I'm going to take the M piece here. You're going to lay these right sides together. These are basic, so it doesn't really matter. But if you had prints, you'd want to do right sides together. Then we're going to take 2 of our A squares, and we're just going to line up that line that we drew earlier. And now I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch on both sides. And you want to make sure you're using a scant 1/4 inch, so just a slightly little bit than a 1/4 inch. That way your blocks won't be too small when you cut them. And you might want to put a few pins just to keep these little squares in place. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and sew a 1/4 inch on both sides of the line. Okay, now that I've got that sewn, I'm just going to cut right on that diagonal line. And now I'm going to press towards these little triangles here. Now that I've got these pressed, I'm going to take my last 2 squares and line one up on one side and the other on the other one. And you want to make sure that the diagonal line goes between those 2 triangles. And then just like before, we're going to do a 1/4 inch on both sides of the drawn lines. And then we're going to just cut on that drawn line just like we did before. And press towards the little triangles. Okay, and your finished little flying geese should measure about 2.5 inches wide by 1.5 inches tall. Mine are pretty close, so I just need to trim a little bit. And when you're trimming these, I like to make sure that I have the diagonal 45-degree line on my ruler lined up with one of these sides of the larger triangle here. And then I use my 1/4 inch mark here to know that I'm about 1/4 inch, and you should be a 1/4 inch from the bottom of that triangle point with your line lined up here. And then when I get that nice and lined up, I'm just going to trim off the excess. Then turn it around. Now we know that we have a nice square corner here, so I'm going to use that to measure the rest of this one off when I trim it. Then you just repeat that for those other little flying geese. If you're finding that your little flying geese are off, just make sure you check your lines when you draw them on and make sure you've got that scant 1/4 inch. Okay, we're going to set these little ones aside. We'll move on to the next step. Okay, we're going to take the I piece and the D piece, and we're going to sew these together, right sides together. Make sure you've got them nice and lined up, and we're going to sew them on the long side, so the 12-inch side of these pieces, and again using a scant 1/4 inch. Okay, and once you have that sewn, you're just going to press the seam open. And I'm pressing the seams open on this one just because when we cut them down, they're going to be really small little pieces. Alright, now we're going to subcut this into 8 sections that are going to be 1.5 inches wide. And you do want to use your ruler lines and just make sure you have a line right on the seam here, just to make sure you've got this nice and straight. You should get 8 total out of this section. Alright, now we're going to sew these together in sets of 2, and we're just going to make sure we alternate the colors so you have a green against a white. And make sure you line up those seams right in the middle there. And then we're just going to sew these little ones together so that we have 4 of these little 4 patches. I just sew these one after another. A little bit of a daisy chain there for these. And then again, I'm going to press those seams open. Here's our little 4 patches. Okay, now we need piece E and piece J. We're going to sew these 2 together. Alright, so when you have your pieces, you're going to just put the green at one side of the top here of the 6-inch side, and then sew 1/4 inch along the side. And now we're going to subcut this piece into 4 sections. And they're going to be 1.5 inches wide, and this should be 3.5 inches tall. It's a good time to check your scant 1/4 inch. If this is a little bit off, if it's a little bit shorter, that means you might want to take a look at your scant 1/4 inch and maybe move your needle over a little bit. Alright, so 1.5 inches, and we should get 4 of them out of this. Again, just make sure your ruler line is lined up with that seam. Alright, now we're going to bring our F pieces here. And we're going to do a little assembly. And we're going to put an F piece onto this little 4 patch. And you're just going to repeat that for all of these. So you should have 4 total. And you're going to just sew these to those little 4 patches with a scant 1/4 inch. And just like before, we're going to press the seams open again. Now that we've got these pressed, we're going to take these pieces from earlier and we're going to line these up so they're on the corner of where we have that, I think that was piece F. So you should have it looking like that. Then again, we're just going to sew these together and just make sure that you line up those seams real well. Alright, so I have these sewn together and I did press the seams open again. And these finished ones should measure 3.5 inches square. Alright, we'll set those aside for now. Then we're going to grab our piece K and then our pieces G. You should have 2 of these G's. And we're going to sew 1 on each of the short sides of the green piece. Making sure you line up those edges and then just do a 1/4 inch on both sides. Okay, press the seam is open again. And now we're going to subcut this one into 4 1.5 inch wide strips here. Again, make sure you're using the guides on your ruler and match them up with those seams. And this is another good way to check your scant 1/4 inch. So 4 that are 1.5 inches thick. And we'll just set those aside. Now we're going to need our N rectangles. You should have 8 of these total. We're going to need our B's and then all of our C's. Now we're going to draw a diagonal line on the C's and the B's. So again, just like I did before, using a fabric-friendly utensil, I'll draw right down the center. You may notice how I hold my ruler. I actually picked up this trick from another quilter, and I can't remember who it was, but she had said you should always hold your ruler with your hand kind of cupped, almost as if you have like an apple or orange underneath it, instead of flat, because with flat you can slide much easier. So I try to remember to just kind of keep my fingers like this. Now that that is all drawn on there, let's take our rectangles, our nice pink ones here, and basically we're going to sew 4, so the diagonal's going this way from top right to bottom left, and then 4, so the diagonal's going the other way, top left down to the right. And I'm going to sew right on the drawn line. Okay, after you have these squares sewn on, and we're going to trim the seam so it's down to 1/4 inch, but you want to make sure you trim on the side of the sewn line that is to this top corner here, because otherwise if you trim the other side, you're going to ruin your piece. And I'm just going to use a ruler and then trim that corner off. And then I'm just going to press this towards the triangle here. Alright, again you should have 4 of each. And then we're going to take our little squares here, same process, and we are going to then put them in the corner here and make sure that your diagonal line matches the diagonal line of the other piece. Here's what the other one's going to look like. So if it starts at the top left, then this little piece is going to start at the top left as well. And then the opposite for the other side. And you're just going to repeat that for these other ones here. And just like with the bigger squares, we're just going to trim off that 1/4 inch and make sure that you're going to the corner, and then press to the little triangle. Alright, now the fun part. We're going to assemble this little block. So let's bring our final pieces of H and L. L is going to be the very center. That's in that nice buttercup color. And then we're going to build out from L. We need our little flying geese from earlier. And then we're going to take 4 of these H squares that are in the leaf color, put those little corners, and that's going to be our little center there. And then we're just going to keep building it out. And you want the small triangle going towards the flying geese, and they should create this V here. Then we're going to take our little 4 patches that we sewed onto these bigger pieces. We're getting that little iris chain look that you'll see in the last set of the blocks. And then we're going to take these strips here, and you got 1 for each side. This is going to be pretty. And then our little corners here. Alright, I'm just going to start sewing these center pieces together first, and then I'll just make my way out. I'll keep the video going so you can just see how I'm sewing it together and what order I'm using. And I'll probably play a little music while I'm doing this. There we have finished block number 7. If you're sewing along, just take your time with this one because there's a lot of little seams that need to be lined up with this. I found with some patience and a seam ripper and then trying again that I got most of the things lined up pretty well. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and visit us at DelfieldQuiltCo.com. And remember, if you're sewing along, I would love to see your pictures. I'll put a link to an email address you can send them to in the description below. Have a great day!